The conference room had that corporate beige thing going on. White walls, fake wood table, motivational poster about teamwork that nobody ever looked at. I sat across from Carrie Ramos while she slid a thin manila folder toward me. Didn't open it herself. Just pushed it across the table and folded her hands. Restructuring, she said. I didn't touch the folder yet. When? End of the quarter, maybe sooner. She had this way of delivering bad news where her voice stayed perfectly level. Made it worse, honestly. The fraud unit is getting cut. Corporate decided to consolidate operations in Hartford. They're offering relocation packages to 3 people. You're not one of them. I looked at the folder. Still didn't open it. How long have you known? 2 weeks. I had to wait for approval to tell you. That tracked. Carrie followed procedure the way some people followed religion. I figured she probably had the conversation scheduled in Outlook, color-coded and everything. Severance is in there, she said, nodding at the folder. It's decent. 6 weeks plus accrued PTO. 6 weeks. I did the math in my head without meaning to. Rent I wasn't paying anymore, car payment, insurance, the storage unit with half my stuff because Amanda kept the house. It'd last maybe 2 months if I stretched it. Okay, I said. Carrie's expression didn't change. HR will reach out Monday to schedule your exit interview. Right. She stood up. Meeting over. I grabbed the folder and walked out, past the cubicles where people were still working like their jobs weren't about to vanish into some Hartford database. Grabbed my coat from my desk. Didn't have much else there. I'd stopped decorating my space after the divorce. Seemed pointless. The January cold hit me the second I stepped outside. Boston in winter felt like the city was trying to freeze you out on purpose. I walked to the T station and rode the red line to Davis Square, where my buddy Marcus had a 2-bedroom he was letting me crash in. Couch wasn't bad. Sectional from IKEA, gray fabric, only a little worn on the armrests. I'd been there since November. 3 months of living out of a duffel bag and trying not to be in the way when Marcus brought someone home. He was good about it, never made me feel like a burden, but I knew. You always know. That night, I lay on the couch staring at the ceiling and doing more math. 6 weeks severance, 2 months if I was careful. Then what? Unemployment would kick in eventually, but that process took forever and paid maybe half what I needed. I could look for another fraud analyst job, but the market was tight, and I didn't have the energy to pretend I was passionate about risk assessment models in some interview. Mostly I just wanted to be somewhere else, somewhere that didn't smell like Marcus's vanilla candles or remind me that I was 36 and starting over with nothing. I didn't sleep great. 2 days later, I checked the mail. Marcus had one of those old-school apartment mailboxes in the lobby, the kind with the tiny brass door and a key that barely turned. Bunch of junk for him, a Verizon bill, and one envelope addressed to me. That was weird. Nobody sent me mail here. Amanda's lawyer used email. Marcus's address wasn't on any of my accounts yet. I turned it over. Return address said Murphy and Associates, Bangor, Maine. Typed label, professional. Didn't recognize the name. I took it upstairs and opened it at the kitchen counter. Inside was a letter, a key, and a folded piece of paper that turned out to be a deed. The letter was on fancy stationery, watermarked and everything. It said, Mr. Edwards, I am writing on behalf of your great-uncle, Edwin Edwards, who passed in December. As executor of his estate, I am pleased to inform you that you have been named sole beneficiary of his property located at 41 Overlook Lane, Gilead, Maine. The property is a fishing camp on the Androscoggin River. It is paid in full with no liens or encumbrances. Enclosed, you will find the deed and a key to the main structure. Your great-uncle left specific instructions regarding the transfer. You may retain ownership provided you follow the attached routine exactly as written. There are no further conditions. Please contact my office at your earliest convenience to finalize the paperwork. Respectfully, Randall Murphy. Esquires, I read it twice. Then I looked at the key. Small, brass, the kind that fit old deadbolts. The deed was legit, notarized and everything, with my name typed in next to grantee. 41 Overlook Lane, 2 acres. Permanent structure plus outbuildings. I didn't know I had a great uncle named Edwin. I mean, maybe my mom mentioned him once or twice, but we weren't close with that side of the family. She died when I was 12, and my dad didn't talk about her people much. I vaguely remembered someone saying there was a relative in Maine who ran a fishing camp, but that was it. And now he was dead, and I owned his place. I unfolded the third piece of paper. It was typed on the same stationery, but the formatting was different. Centered at the top in bold letters, it said, routine under that, a numbered list, 12 items. Some of them were normal, some weren't. 1. Do not arrive after dark. 2. Upon arrival, unlock the main cabin and open all interior doors. 3. Light the wood stove before full sunset every night from October through April. 4. Keep 3 days of firewood stacked on the porch at all times. 5. Do not swim in the river. 6. If you hear your name called from the water, do not respond. 7. Every Sunday, walk the property line starting at the northeast post. 8. Mark any disturbances, footprints, broken branches, moved stones, in the logbook. 9. Do not bring guests between November and March. 10. If the dock bell rings and no one is there, go inside immediately and lock the doors. 11. Burn all garbage in the fire pit. Do not leave trash outside overnight. 12. Follow these rules exactly. Do not make exceptions. I put the paper down, then I picked it up again and read it a third time. The first few made sense. Rural property maintenance, basic fire safety, that kind of thing. But number 5. Number 6. The dock bell one. I looked at the letter again. You may retain ownership provided you follow the attached routine exactly as written. Exactly. That word was doing a lot of work. I sat there for a while, staring at the deed, paid in full, no mortgage, 2 acres on a river in Maine. I could sell it probably, use the money to get back on my feet, find a new apartment, buy some time, or I could go there, live in it, stop paying rent I didn't have. It was free, completely free. All I had to do was follow a weird list. I thought about the conference room, Carrie's flat voice, 6 weeks severance, the sectional couch I'd been sleeping on for 3 months. I thought about the list again. Do not arrive after dark. If you hear your name called from the water, do not respond. Probably some local superstition thing. Old guy living alone in the woods, making up rules to feel in control. I'd seen weirder stuff. People got strange when they were isolated too long. I folded the papers and put them back in the envelope, slipped the key into my pocket. It felt solid, real, an easy reset. That's what I kept thinking. A place that was mine, no landlord, no rent, no Amanda's lawyer sending emails about dividing the furniture, just a camp in the woods and a list of rules. I could follow rules. The word exactly sat in the back of my head like a pebble in my shoe, but I ignored it. I had 6 weeks of severance and nothing tying me to Boston except a couch that wasn't mine. I pulled out my phone and looked up Gilead, Maine, population 800 and change, 2 hours north of Portland, middle of nowhere. The satellite view showed trees and a river and not much else. I could be there in 5 hours. I didn't call the lawyer yet. Didn't tell Marcus. Just sat at the counter holding the deed and thinking about how easy it would be to pack the duffel bag, get in my car and drive north. How easy it would be to start over somewhere nobody knew me. Somewhere I wouldn't have to explain why my marriage fell apart, or why I couldn't keep a job, or why I was 36 and had nothing to show for it except a sectional couch I didn't even own. The key was still in my pocket. I turned it over with my fingers, feeling the ridges. Exactly. Yeah. That word was definitely doing a lot of work. I packed everything I owned in about 20 minutes. That was the part that got to me a little, honestly. 36 years, and it all fit in a duffel bag, a backpack, and 2 cardboard boxes I found behind Marcus's building. Clothes, laptop, a few books I kept meaning to donate. The French press Amanda bought me back when we still did things like make coffee together on Sundays. I left a note on the counter for Marcus. Just said something came up. I'd call him in a week or 2. Didn't mention Maine. Didn't mention the inheritance. He'd probably figure I'd done something stupid, which wasn't exactly wrong. My SUV was a 2009 Pathfinder with 160,000 miles on it and a check engine light that had been on since October. I loaded everything into the back, wedged the boxes between the spare tire and the wheel well, and put the deed packet on the passenger seat where I could see it. The brass key went in the cup holder. I sat there for a minute in Marcus's parking lot with the engine running, heat blasting stale air that smelled like old fries. The GPS said 5 hours and 12 minutes to Gilead. I put it in drive. I-95 North cuts straight out of Boston through towns that blur together if you're not paying attention. I wasn't paying much attention. I stopped once outside Portsmouth for gas and a bathroom that smelled like industrial pine cleaner. Bought a coffee I didn't finish. Back on the highway, the traffic thinned out past the New Hampshire line. And by the time I hit Portland, it was just me and a few semis doing 70 in the right lane. I took the exit toward Greenville around 2 in the afternoon. That's when the interstate ended and the route started folding in on itself. 2-lane state roads with names instead of numbers. Towns with populations under 1,000. The kind of places where the gas station doubles as the grocery store and the post office. The trees changed too. Less deciduous, more spruce and pine pressing close to the shoulder. Dark green, year-round. The kind that doesn't let much light through. Past Greenville, the pavement got worse. Frost heaves every quarter mile. Patches that didn't quite match the original surface. The GPS started hesitating, recalculating every few minutes like it wasn't sure I should be going this way. I passed a hand-painted sign for a hunting lodge, another for firewood delivery. Then nothing, just road and trees. The farther I went, the more it felt like the route was narrowing. Not literally. The road stayed 2 lanes, but the spruce crept closer, branches scraping the top of the Pathfinder when the wind picked up. The sky got smaller. I couldn't see more than a few dozen yards in any direction, just the strip of cracked asphalt ahead and the wall of green on either side. It felt deliberate, like I was being funneled towards something I'd never actually agreed to. I thought about the rules again. The list, 12 of them, printed on that 3rd sheet of paper in clear block text. Follow this routine exactly as written. The word exactly stuck with me. Not carefully or closely. Exactly. That's the kind of word you use in contracts when you don't want wiggle room. When deviation means consequences. I didn't like it. But I kept driving. Rockwood showed up around 4. It wasn't much. A main street with maybe 6 buildings, a post office the size of a garden shed, and a Circle K with 2 pumps out front. My tank was at a quarter. I pulled in. The station was clean enough. White tile floors, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, a rack of tourist maps near the register that looked like they hadn't been touched in months. I grabbed a coffee from the self-serve counter, black, and a bag of pretzels I didn't really want. The cashier was a woman in her 50s maybe, with curly auburn hair and a name tag that said Cindy. She rang me up without saying anything, eyes flicking to the window where my Pathfinder sat at pump 2. 40 on 2, I said, handing her my card. She swiped it, paused, looked past me again at the passenger seat where the deed packet sat in plain view. "You're heading to the Edwards place," she said. Not a question. I blinked. "Yeah, how'd you—" Saw the name on the envelope. She handed the card back. Her face had changed. Not scared exactly, just tired. Openly sorry. "You family?" "Great nephew," I said. Didn't really know him. She nodded slow, didn't look surprised. Edwin kept to himself. Smart man in some ways, not smart enough in others. I waited. She didn't elaborate, just leaned on the counter and looked at me like she was deciding something. "Listen," she said finally. "People around here know that stretch of river, the Androscoggin, up past Gilead where it bends east. It's got a reputation." "For what?" "For not being normal." She said it flat, matter of fact. "People who treat it like it is, like it's just water and fish and rocks, they tend to disappear, or come back wrong. Edwin knew that. He followed his rules, kept his head down, didn't make it out anyway." I felt something cold move through my chest. I didn't let it show. "He died in December. Natural causes," the lawyer said. "Maybe." Cindy shrugged. "Doesn't change what I'm telling you. You inherited that place, you inherited what comes with it. Just keep your eyes open. Don't assume you understand what you're looking at." I wanted to ask what that meant, what she thought was out there, but her tone made it clear she'd said all she planned to. I took the coffee and the pretzels. "Thanks for the warning." "Wasn't a warning," she said. "Just a fact." I walked out, pumped $40 of gas into the Pathfinder and got back on the road. I filed the whole conversation under local superstition. Small towns breed that kind of thing. Ghost stories, folklore, the idea that certain places are cursed or haunted or whatever. It didn't mean anything. Cindy seemed sincere, sure, but sincere people believe nonsense all the time. Still, I thought about Rule 6. Do not respond if you hear your name called from the water. The road past Rockwood turned to gravel after about 15 minutes, then dirt, then ruts so deep I had to slow to 20 miles an hour just to keep the Pathfinder from bottoming out. The GPS lost signal entirely. I was navigating off the printed directions Randy Murphy had included in the envelope. Follow Route 16 north for 32 miles. Turn left onto unmarked logging road at mile marker 29. Continue 4.6 miles to dead end. The last signs vanished. No mile markers, no route numbers, nothing to confirm I was even on a real road anymore. Just two parallel tracks through the trees with grass growing up the middle. The spruce pressed in so close the branches scraped both sides of the vehicle at once. It got darker. Not sunset dark. It was only 4:30. But the kind of shade that happens when the canopy overhead is too thick to let much through. I kept going because there was nowhere to turn around. The Allagash region opened up eventually, the trees pulling back just enough to let me see water in the distance. A tributary maybe, or a widening in the river. I couldn't tell. The track curved left and the ruts got worse, mud sucking at the tires every time I hit a low spot. Then the trees swallowed the track completely, branches forming a tunnel overhead, and I had the distinct feeling I was driving into something's throat. The fishing camp appeared without warning. 1 second I was staring at nothing but spruce and mud. The next, the trees broke apart, and there it was. A small cabin, maybe 20 by 30 feet, with a steep pitched roof and a stone chimney. Painted brown once, now mostly bare wood. A dock extending 20 feet into the river. Gray planks weathered almost black. A generator shed off to the left, door hanging crooked on its hinges. And the river itself moving dark and smooth, no rapids or noise, just a wide black surface that reflected the sky without rippling. It was quiet. That was the thing that hit me first. No birds, no wind, just the low idle of the Pathfinder's engine and my own breathing. The river looked like it had been waiting for me to arrive. I sat there with my hands on the wheel, staring through the windshield at the camp, the dock, the water. The brass key was still in the cup holder, the deed packet still on the passenger seat, everything I owned still in the back. This was it. 41 Overlook Lane, my inheritance. I didn't move, not yet. I grabbed my duffel from the back seat and the deed packet from the passenger side. The brass key felt heavier than it should have when I picked it up from the cup holder. Probably just cold. Everything up here was cold. The cabin door had a deadbolt above the knob. The key slid in smooth, which surprised me. I figured a place this isolated would have rust or warped wood or something, but the lock turned clean and the door opened without catching. Inside smelled like wood smoke and dust and something else I couldn't name. Something organic. Not rot exactly, just old. The main room took up most of the space. A kitchen area to the left with a propane stove, a metal sink, and open shelving stacked with canned goods. A wood table in the center with two mismatched chairs. A couch that looked like it came from a yard sale in the 80s, plaid and sagging in the middle. The wood stove sat against the far wall, black iron with a glass front, cold right now. A doorway on the right probably led to a bedroom or bathroom. Small windows on 3 walls, all with faded curtains pulled halfway. And on the table, right in the center next to a mug with something dried at the bottom, sat a green binder. 3-ring, the kind you'd use in high school. It was open. I dropped my duffel by the door and walked over. The routine page sat there. Same 12 rules Randy Murphy had mailed me. Same typewritten text on white paper, holes punched on the left side. Someone had slid it into a plastic sheet protector. The binder had more pages underneath. I flipped back to the first page. Handwritten notes in blue ink, dated going back years. October 3rd, 2019. Heard knocking at 9 p.m., stayed inside per Rule 10. November 17th, 2019. Walked property line, found 2 footprints near Southeast Post, logged per Rule 8. January 8th, 2020. Generator hiccup at 2 a.m., restarted within 4 minutes, no incident. Edwin's handwriting, had to be. Neat block letters, a little shaky in places. I kept flipping, pages and pages of dates and observations. Some entries were single lines, others went half a page. March 22nd, 2021. Smelled peppermint inside cabin at dawn. Could not locate source. Wore life jacket for 6 hours as precaution. That one bugged me a little. The idea of an old man sitting in a life jacket inside his own cabin for 6 hours because he smelled something. Halfway through the binder, I found a hand-drawn map. Pencil on graph paper, surprisingly detailed. The cabin marked as a small square near the center. The river curving along the bottom edge. Property lines sketched in, posts numbered 1 through 4 at the corners, and 3 red X's scattered across the page. 1 near the dock, 1 in the woods to the west, 1 right at the southeast corner where the property line met the water. No labels, no explanation, just X's. I turned past the map and found another page in the same plastic protector as the routine. Different paper, slightly yellowed. 7 rules typed in the same font but numbered differently. Someone had written additional at the top in red marker. Rule 1. Keep the generator running from sunset to sunrise with no breaks. Rule 2. No lights after midnight unless the generator is running. Rule 3. Never stand on the dock when knocking starts. Rule 4. Ignore voices from the river, especially family. Rule 5. If peppermint appears, put on the old life jacket by the door. Rule 6. Set a bowl of salt on the sill at dusk and dump it at dawn. Rule 7. If someone waves from the far bank, close eyes and count to 60. I read through them twice, then a third time. The first set of rules Randy sent me were weird but explainable. Don't swim in a cold river. Don't leave trash out for bears. Walk your property to check for trespassers. Fine. These were different. Knocking. Voices that sound like family. Someone waving from across the river. I looked up from the binder toward the window, facing the water. The light outside was fading fast now. Maybe another 20 minutes before full dark. The generator shed sat about 30 feet to the left of the cabin. I'd seen it when I pulled up. Crooked door, peeling paint, probably a portable unit inside, the kind that runs on gas or propane. Keep it running from sunset to sunrise with no breaks. I checked my phone. 4:51 p.m. Sunset up here this time of year was probably around 5:30, maybe earlier with all the trees. I should have gone out right then to check the generator, make sure it had fuel, figure out how to start it. Instead, I stood there flipping back through Edwin's notes, looking for something. An explanation, maybe, or proof this was all some elaborate joke. Found an entry from December 9th, just 3 weeks ago. Generator steady, no activity, routine holding. December 9th. Randy's letter said Edwin died in December. Didn't give an exact date. I flipped forward. December 10th, blank. December 11th, blank. Nothing after that. Just empty page protectors with unused lined paper, like Edwin had prepared space for entries he never got to write. My hands were cold. The cabin was cold. I should have started the wood stove. I closed the binder and set it back where I'd found it, centered on the table next to the mug. Then I heard it. A low mechanical sputter from outside. Once, twice. The generator. I moved to the window and looked toward the shed. Couldn't see much in the fading light, just the outline of the structure and that crooked door hanging half open. Another sputter. Then a cough. Then silence. I waited. Nothing. I crossed to the door and stepped outside onto the porch. Wooden planks, uneven and soft in places. The air smelled like pine and river water, and something underneath that reminded me of wet metal. The generator sat inside the shed, visible through the open door. Red Honda portable, bigger than I expected. Industrial size. A fuel gauge on the side showed 3/4 full. It wasn't running. I walked over, boots crunching on pine needles and gravel. The unit was still warm when I touched the casing. It had been running recently. Maybe when I pulled up. Maybe it shut off when I was inside reading the binder. There was a pull start cord and an electric ignition button. I hit the button first. Nothing. I checked the fuel line, the oil level, the choke. Everything looked fine. I hit the button again. Click. No turnover. I grabbed the pull cord and yanked. The engine turned but didn't catch. I yanked again. Same thing. Third pull, I put my back into it. The cord came out smooth and the engine coughed once, sputtered, and died. The sky was darker now. Definitely past 5. Sunset was close. I pulled again and again. My shoulder started burning. The engine would turn, sputter, almost catch, then quit. On the 8th or 9th pull, I stopped and stepped back. My breath came out in visible clouds. The temperature was dropping fast. Keep the generator running from sunset to sunrise with no breaks. I looked back at the cabin. Dark windows, no lights inside. I hadn't even checked if there were light switches or if the whole place ran off the generator. The river made no sound behind me. I could feel it there, though. A presence, the kind of quiet that isn't peaceful, just empty. I tried the generator 3 more times, same result. Then I heard the knocking. Slow, even, wet sounding like someone tapping on soaked wood. Knock, pause, knock, pause, knock. It came from the direction of the dock. I turned and looked. The dock stretched out into the water, maybe 20 feet of gray planks. I couldn't see underneath from this angle. The light was too dim and the dock sat too low to the waterline. The knocking continued. Same rhythm, same wet sound. Never stand on the dock when knocking starts. I didn't move toward it. I'm not an idiot, but I didn't move away either. I just stood there next to the generator shed, listening. Then a second set of knocking started. This one came from across the river. Same rhythm, same wet quality. Like the first set was calling and the second was answering. Knock, pause, knock, pause, knock. Both in perfect sync now. The hair on my neck stood up. Not from cold. I should have gone inside. Locked the door. Followed the rules. But I was still processing. Still trying to make it make sense. Knocking could be anything. Wood expanding in the cold. Ice forming. A beaver or something hitting the dock supports. Then I heard the voice. Dougie. Soft. carried over the water like someone speaking right next to my ear. "Dougie, honey, are you there?" My mother's voice. I stopped breathing. She'd been dead for 24 years. I was 12 when the aneurysm took her. I remembered her voice in pieces now, the way she said my name when I came home from school, the way she sang off key while cooking, the exact cadence of "Dougie, honey" when she wanted my attention. This sounded exactly like that. "I need help, sweetheart. I can't find my way back." The voice came from the water, somewhere out past the dock, maybe near the far bank. Hard to tell with the way sound carried. Ignore voices from the river, especially family. My hands were shaking, not from cold. "Dougie, please, it's so dark here." I wanted to answer. Every instinct I had said answer when someone asks for help. Answer when it's your mother. But it wasn't my mother. Couldn't be. I took a step backward toward the cabin. My boot caught on something, a root or a rock, and I stumbled but kept my feet. "Don't leave me here, honey. Just come to the water. Just talk to me." The voice was closer now, or louder. I couldn't tell which. I turned and walked to the cabin, not running, walking, fast but controlled. Behind me, the knocking continued under the dock and across the river, still in sync. Behind me, my mother's voice called my name again, pleading now. I reached the door and grabbed the handle. It turned. I stepped inside and shut it behind me, fingers fumbling with the deadbolt until it clicked home. The cabin was dark, completely dark. No generator meant no lights unless they were battery-powered or propane. I stood with my back against the door, breathing hard. Outside, the knocking continued, steady, even, wet. Outside, the voice called again. "Dougie, why won't you help me?" I didn't answer. I slid down until I was sitting on the floor, back still against the door, and closed my eyes. The rules weren't about routine. They were about staying alive. I got inside and locked the door behind me. Through the deadbolt, my hands were still shaking. The knocking kept going, same rhythm, same wet sound. Under the dock, across the river, perfectly in sync. And that voice, my mother's voice, saying my name, the exact way she used to. I stood there with my back against the door for probably 2 minutes, just breathing. The voice kept calling, pleading. It sounded so real I had to remind myself she'd been dead for 24 years. Rule 6. Don't respond if you hear your name called from the water. Rule 4 from the additional page. Ignore voices from the river, especially family. Edwin knew. He'd heard it too. Had to have. I forced myself to move away from the door. Went to the window and looked out at the generator shed. The crooked door hung half open. Inside, that red Honda sat there doing nothing while the sky got darker. The routine said keep the generator running sunset to sunrise with no breaks. It was maybe 10 minutes to sunset. Maybe less. I grabbed the binder off the table and flipped to Edwin's map. The 3 red X's stared back at me. One near the dock, one in the woods to the west, one at the southeast corner where the property line met water. No labels. No explanation. I turned pages until I found an entry from April 14th, 2 years back. Edwin's neat block letters. Generator quit at 11 p.m. Restart failed 4 times. Found spare belt in shed, bottom shelf, wrapped in blue shop towel. Fuel shutoff had been bumped my elbow when checking oil. Lever needs to stay up. Wrote note for myself. Can't afford that mistake again. Bottom shelf. Blue shop towel. I looked out the window again. The knocking had stopped. Just like that. Total silence. Worse than the knocking, honestly. I unlocked the door and stepped back onto the porch. The planks felt soft under my boots. The air had that pre-sunset stillness where everything holds its breath. The dock sat empty. The river moved dark and smooth. No sound from across the water. I walked to the generator shed, kept my eyes on the path, not the river. Inside, The Honda looked the same as before, warm but dead. I crouched down and checked the bottom shelf. Found the blue shop towel right away, folded into a square. Inside was a black rubber belt, maybe 8 inches around, with ribbed edges. Looked like a spare drive belt for the generator. Next to the towel sat a piece of paper, laminated in clear plastic. Edwin's handwriting in blue ink, bigger than his binder entries. Fuel shutoff lever. Must stay up check before every start. Do not bump with elbow when checking oil. This is not a joke. The last line was underlined 3 times. I looked at the generator. Found the fuel shutoff lever on the left side, a small metal tab about 2 inches long. It was pointing down, completely down. I hadn't bumped it. I checked the fuel line and oil level, sure, but I didn't remember touching that lever. Didn't even notice it. I flipped it up, heard a tiny click, hit the ignition button. The Honda turned over immediately, caught on the second rotation, settled into a steady mechanical hum that filled the shed and spilled out into the clearing. The relief I felt was probably out of proportion, but I stood there for a few seconds just listening to it run. Edwin's note sat on the shelf. This is not a joke. Yeah, I was starting to get that. I stepped out of the shed and the knocking started again. Not under the dock this time. On the porch steps, same wet sound, same careful rhythm. Knock, pause, knock, pause, knock. But now it was maybe 15 feet from the cabin door. I turned and looked at the porch, the steps leading up to it. 5 wooden risers, weathered gray, same as the dock planks. Nothing there, just the knocking. Moving up the steps one at a time, I could track it. Bottom step, pause, second step, pause, third step. The boards didn't creak, didn't shift. No weight pressing down. Just that tapping. Wet and deliberate. Fourth step. I backed toward the cabin door. Watched the top step. The knocking reached it, then moved onto the porch itself, crossing toward the door. I got inside and locked it. Again. Second time in 10 minutes. The knocking reached the door and stopped. Silence. I stood there with my hand on the deadbolt. Listened. Nothing. Then a single knock. Right on the door. Same wet sound. Like knuckles wrapped in something damp. I didn't move. Another knock. Same spot. I stepped back from the door. Looked at the binder on the table. Rule 10. If the dock bell rings with no one present, go inside immediately and lock doors. There was no dock bell. But the idea was the same. Something outside that shouldn't be there. Get inside. Lock up. The knocking stopped. I waited. Counted to 60 in my head, same as Rule 7 from the additional page. Still nothing. The generator hummed outside, steady and even. The light through the windows had gone orange, then pink, almost sunset. I went to the window and looked out. A boat was coming up the river. Small aluminum hull, maybe 14 feet, with an outboard motor. Single person at the tiller, moving slow and careful, angling toward the dock. I watched him pull alongside, kill the motor, tie off to a cleat I hadn't noticed before. He stepped onto the dock without looking at the far bank. Tall guy over 6 feet, wearing a Maine Warden Service uniform and a dark green life vest. Sandy brown hair cut short, maybe late 30s. He walked up toward the cabin with steady steps, no hesitation. Like he'd done this before. I unlocked the door and stepped out onto the porch before he reached it. He stopped at the bottom step, looked up at me, steel blue eyes, no expression. "You're Douglas," he said. "Yeah. Lee Bravo, Warden Service." He didn't offer a hand, just stood there. I was Edwin's check-in contact. He'd radio in twice a week. Tuesdays and Saturdays. Missed the last 2. I nodded. Didn't know what to say to that. "Nobody told me he died until yesterday," Lee said. "Got the word from Murphy's office. They said you inherited." "That's right." Lee glanced at the generator shed, at the light coming through the cabin windows. Back to me. You get the generator running? Yeah, fuel shutoff was down. Edwin's elbow, Lee said. I read the note. Good. He looked past me at the cabin. You read the binder? Most of it. All of it, Lee said, wasn't a question. You need to read all of it. I'm working on it. He nodded once, looked at the river. Still didn't glance at the far bank. No one searches after dark, he said. On this stretch, if someone goes missing, we wait for daylight. That's policy. Why? Because we'd lose the searchers, too. He said it flat. Matter of fact. Edwin wrote the routine after 5 bodies got pulled from the river in 18 months. All of them locals. All of them knew the water. 2 were experienced guides. I felt something cold settle in my chest. What happened to them? Drowned. Lee looked at me. Officially. But drowning doesn't explain why they were found miles upstream from where they went in. Or why some of them had been dead for weeks but looked fresh. I didn't say anything. The rules aren't folklore, Lee said. Edwin figured out what works. Discipline kept him alive for 9 years on this property. You want details? Read the binder. He wrote down everything that mattered. What about what he didn't write down? Then it didn't matter. Lee reached into his vest and pulled out a small black radio. VHF, looked military grade. He handed it up to me. Channel 16. Tuesdays and Saturdays, 8 a.m. You missed 2 check-ins, I come looking. But not after dark. I took the radio. Heavier than I expected. Lee pulled something else from his pocket. A sealed foil packet. Peppermint gum. 5 sticks, still wrapped. He held it out. What's this for? Testing, Lee said. Not comfort. If you smell peppermint and you haven't opened that pack, put on the life jacket by the door and stay inside until it clears. I took the gum. The foil was cold. Edwin had a March entry about smelling peppermint, I said. I know. I read his reports. Lee stepped back toward the dock. He handled it right. You do the same. Wait. He kept walking, untied his boat, stepped in. Lee. He started the motor, looked at me one more time. Follow the routine exactly, he said. No exceptions. Edwin's discipline kept this place stable. You break that, I don't know what happens. And I don't want to find out. He pulled away from the dock, turned the boat downriver. I watched him go, watched him keep his face turned from the far bank the whole time, even when he rounded the bend and disappeared. The generator hummed behind me. The sun touched the tree line. I went inside and locked the door. Lee's boat disappeared around the bend by the time I got back inside. The generator hummed steady outside. I checked the clock on the propane stove. 6:23. Sunset had come and gone while we were talking. I opened the binder to the additional rules page. Rule 6. Set bowl of salt on sill at dusk and dump at dawn. There was a ceramic bowl in the cabinet above the sink, white with a hairline crack down one side. I filled it halfway with salt from a cylindrical container that had been sitting next to the canned soup. Morton. The blue label. I set it on the kitchen windowsill facing the river and stepped back. The bowl just sat there. Salt. That was it. I didn't know what it was supposed to do. Edwin's notes didn't explain, and Lee hadn't offered details. Just another rule in a list that kept growing. The VHF radio sat on the table where I'd left it. Black plastic casing, rubber antenna, channel dial set to 16. I picked it up and turned it over. Military grade, Lee said. Heavier than the walkie-talkies I'd used as a kid. I set it back down next to the binder. The foil packet of gum sat beside it. I could open it right now and know what peppermint smelled like. Or I could leave it sealed and trust I'd recognize the scent if it showed up on its own. I left it sealed. I pulled out one of the mismatched chairs and sat facing the window. The river moved past in the last bit of twilight, dark and smooth. No ripples, no sound. Just water doing what water does. Except it wasn't just water. Cindy at the Circle K said people who treated it like ordinary water disappeared or came back wrong. Lee said 5 bodies in 18 months, all locals who knew the area. Edwin wrote a list of rules and followed them for 9 years, and Edwin still died. I looked at the clock again. 6:31. The knocking had stopped after Lee arrived. The voice using my mother's cadence had gone quiet, but I kept hearing it in my head anyway. "Dougie, honey, are you there?" In the exact tone she used when I was 12 and came home late from a friend's house without calling. She'd been dead 24 years. Whatever was out there in the water, it wasn't her. I got up and checked the deadbolt. Locked. I checked the other rooms. Small bedroom with a twin bed and wool blanket. Bathroom with a composting toilet and no running water. Back door with its own deadbolt also locked. 3 windows total, all latched from inside. The generator kept running outside. Steady hum. No sputters. I went back to the kitchen and sat down again. The clock read 6:47. This was going to be a long night. I didn't mean to watch the clock that close. It just happened. 7:15, 7:52, 8:33. I tried reading more of Edwin's entries, but my eyes kept drifting to the clock, then to the window, then back to the clock. The generator hummed. The river moved. The salt sat in the bowl doing nothing I could see. At 9:08, there was a single knock from somewhere outside. Wet sound. Same as before. I didn't move. Rule 10 said, lock the doors if the bell rings with no one present. I was already inside, already locked in. I just waited. Another knock. Then silence. I counted to 60 in my head. Habit now, I guess. When I finished, the knocking hadn't returned. 9:41, 10:18, 11:03. I made coffee on the propane stove using the French press from my bag and grounds I found in a sealed jar on the shelf. It gave me something to do with my hands. The coffee tasted burnt and over-extracted, but I drank it anyway. 11:36. The lamp on the table ran off the generator. I'd turned it on after Lee left, and the bulb cast yellow light across the binder and radio. Outside the windows, everything was black. No moon yet. Just darkness and the faint outline of trees against slightly less dark sky. 11:51. I got up and checked the deadbolt again, even though I'd checked it 20 minutes ago. Still locked. 11:58. The VHF radio clicked, just once. A small mechanical sound like the power switch flipping on its own. I turned and looked at it. The channel dial still showed 16. The power indicator light glowed red. I hadn't touched it. Static poured out of the speaker, not loud, but steady. White noise filling the room. Then a voice came through. Calm. Even. Lee's exact rhythm. "Douglas, this is Lee Bravo. Need you to check the dock line. Wind's picking up, and I don't want it coming loose overnight." I stared at the radio. There was no wind. I could see through the window. The trees outside weren't moving at all. "Just a quick check," the voice continued in Lee's cadence. "Won't take more than a minute." I reached for the power switch and turned it off. The red light went dark. Static cut out mid-burst. The radio clicked again. Power light back on. Red glow. Static resumed like it had never stopped. "Douglas," Lee's voice said. "Patient, reasonable. It's a safety issue. You don't want the boat drifting off." Lee didn't leave a boat. He took his boat when he left 2 hours ago. I hit the power button again, held it down for 3 seconds to make sure. The light went out. 5 seconds later, it clicked back on. This time there were 2 voices, Lee's voice on top, clear and calm. "Just step outside and check the line, standard procedure." And underneath, muffled and distant like it was traveling through water. "Edwin's alive. He's waiting for you. First red X." I pulled the binder toward me and flipped to the map page. 3 red X, no labels. First one near the dock, second one in the woods to the west, third at the southeast corner where the property line met the water. The voice came through again, that second one distorted. He needs help. He's been waiting. First red X. Edwin died in December. Randy Murphy's letter said so. Natural causes. The first red X sat right at the end of the dock on Edwin's hand-drawn map. I looked at the additional rules page. Rule 3. Do not stand on dock when knocking starts. It was 11:58 when the radio turned itself on. Midnight in 2 minutes. Rule 2 from the additional page. No lights after midnight unless generator running. The generator was running. I could hear it through the walls. I stayed in my chair and watched the radio. Lee's voice. You're making this harder than it needs to be. The second voice, clearer now. Come to the dock. He's waiting. I didn't touch the power button again. Didn't seem to matter. The clock hit midnight. I got up and went to the kitchen window. Left the radio on the table, still broadcasting static and those 2 voices trading off. The moonlight had started spreading across the river. Not full moon, maybe 3/4, but enough to turn the water silver black. Enough to see the dock stretching out 20 feet. The surface was smooth, no wind, no ripples. Then something moved. A ripple, small at first, coming from the far bank. It traveled toward shore in a straight line, cutting across the current instead of with it. I watched it come, steady, deliberate. The voices behind me kept going. Lee's calm instructions, the muffled one saying Edwin's name. The ripple reached the dock and stopped. Then the smell hit. Peppermint, sharp and clean, like someone had just unwrapped a piece of gum right next to my face. I turned and looked at the foil packet on the table, still sealed. The smell got stronger. I looked at the additional rules page, still open in the binder. Rule 5. If peppermint appears, put on old life jacket by door. There was a life jacket hanging on a nail beside the door. Faded orange with gray straps and U.S. Coast Guard approval tag from 1994. I'd seen it when I came in, but hadn't thought about it. The peppermint smell filled the whole cabin now, thick in my nose and throat. I crossed to the door and lifted the life jacket off the nail, heavier than I expected. The foam inside had compressed over years of use, and the fabric smelled like mildew and river water. I put my arms through and buckled the straps across my chest. The radio went silent behind me. No static, no voices. I stood there in Edwin's old life jacket, smelling peppermint that had no source, watching moonlight spread across water that wasn't behaving like water should. The clock read 12:04. I stood in the middle of the room wearing Edwin's life jacket. The canvas smelled old and damp and something chemical I couldn't place. Probably mildew mixed with whatever they treated the fabric with back when this thing was new. The buckles hung loose at my sides because I didn't know if I was supposed to tighten them or just have it on. The additional rules said put it on if peppermint appeared. Didn't specify buckled or unbuckled. I left them loose. The peppermint smell faded around 12:15. I checked the clock twice to be sure. 1 minute it was sharp enough to taste. The next it was gone completely. No gradual fade. Just there, then not. The radio kept going. Lee's voice cycled through the same 3 phrases about the dock line and safety procedure and making things harder than necessary. The muffled voice underneath kept saying Edwin's name. I stayed at the window watching the dock and the ripple that had stopped at the post 20 minutes ago. The water looked flat again. No movement. The moon sat lower than before, maybe an hour from setting, and the light came in at a different angle that made the river look more black than silver. At 12:43, the knocking came back. Same wet sound, same rhythm. It started under the dock just like before, that hollow knock-pause knock coming from the pilings where they met the water. I counted 5 knocks. Then it stopped. Then it moved. The sound climbed. I heard it travel up the left post in beats, each one higher than the last. Knock at the waterline. Pause. Knock 3 feet up. Pause. Knock 6 feet up. It reached the top of the post where the plank started and moved across to the next post. Then it climbed that one the same way. Exact rhythm, exact spacing, like something was pulling itself up hand over hand, but the only sound was knuckles hitting wood. I stepped back from the window. The life jacket shifted on my shoulders and I realized I'd been holding my breath. The knocking reached the shore end of the dock and stopped. I waited. The radio kept broadcasting behind me. Lee's voice. The muffled voice. Static underneath both. Then I heard my name. Dougie. Same voice as before, my mother's voice. Exact pitch and cadence she used when I was 12, and she'd call me in from the backyard because dinner was ready. Soft, patient, a little worried. Dougie, honey, I know you're in there. I didn't move. Rule 6 said don't respond to your name from the water. Rule 4 from the additional page said ignore voices from the river, especially family. I kept my mouth shut and stayed 3 feet back from the window. It's okay, sweetheart. You don't have to be scared. The voice paused. I heard the generator humming outside and the static from the radio and my own breathing inside the life jacket. Then the voice changed. Douglas, not Dougie. Douglas, my full name. Same voice but different tone. Flatter, more careful, like someone reading a name off a document they weren't sure how to pronounce. Douglas Edwards. Middle name, too. I'd never told anyone here my middle name. It wasn't on the deed Randy Murphy sent, just Douglas Edwards, without the middle initial. Douglas Rain Edwards. My chest went cold. Rain was my mother's maiden name. My parents gave it to me as a middle name after she died. The only people who knew that were Amanda, Marcus, and my father. I hadn't said it out loud in years. The voice kept going. Douglas Rain Edwards, born March 7th, 1988, Somerville. It was reading my life. Date, year, city, all correct. The voice still sounded like my mother, but the rhythm was wrong now, too even, like a recording or someone practicing lines. Employed Liberty Mutual, Boston. Terminated January 19th. I felt my hands start shaking. The voice knew about the termination. That was 6 days ago. This thing had information from 6 days ago. Married Amanda Kress, June 12th, 2015. Divorced November 9th, 2022. Amanda's middle name. The exact dates. I stared at the window and didn't say a word. The voice stopped. The knocking started again, now on the porch steps. Same wet rhythm climbing up, bottom step, second step, third step. It reached the top and crossed the porch to the door. One knock. Pause. Second knock. Then silence. I counted to 60 in my head like Rule 7 said. When I got to 60, I counted another 60 just to be sure. The knocking didn't come back. The radio finally went quiet around 1:15. No voices, no static. Just the red power light still glowing. I didn't touch it. I sat in the chair facing the door with the life jacket still on. The generator kept running. I watched the clock move through 1:30, 200, 2:45. My eyes felt dry and heavy, but I didn't close them. Every time I thought about sleeping, I remembered the voice saying my full name and my birthday and Amanda's middle name and the termination date. I didn't know what that meant. I didn't know how it knew those things. I just knew I wasn't going to sleep. The sky started going gray around 5:30. I watched it happen through the kitchen window. Black to charcoal to slate to pale gray blue. No sunrise, just gradual lightning. Birds started up around 600. Normal birds, chickadees or sparrows or something that sounded regular and alive. At 6:12, I unbuckled the life jacket and hung it back on the nail by the door. At 6:40, I made coffee on the propane stove using the last of the grounds from Edwin's jar. It tasted burnt again, but I drank it anyway. At 700, I walked to the window with the bowl of salt still sitting on the sill. The salt looked the same as last night. White, dry, undisturbed. Rule 6 said, dump it at dawn. I carried the bowl outside, walked 5 steps from the porch, and poured it onto the ground. The salt made a small white pile on the dirt and pine needles. I went back inside and rinsed the bowl in the sink, using water from a 5-gallon jug under the counter. At 7:20, I looked at the VHF radio, still sitting on the table with the red power light still on. That was the problem. The radio turned itself on at midnight. The voices came through. The peppermint smell hit right after. The knocking started. It all connected to the radio. Lee said to use it for check-ins on Tuesdays and Saturdays. He didn't say to leave it on. He didn't say to keep it inside. I picked up the radio. It was still heavy, military grade. The power light stayed red. I walked to the door, unlocked the deadbolt, and stepped outside. The morning air smelled like pine and cold water. The generator hummed steady in the shed 30 feet to my left. The dock sat empty. The river moved past, smooth and quiet. I walked to the generator shed and pulled the crooked door open. The Honda sat in the middle of the plywood floor, still running. The fuel gauge showed just over half. The blue shop towel with the spare belt sat on the bottom shelf next to the laminated note about the fuel shutoff lever. I set the radio on the top shelf above the generator. The red light glowed in the dim shed. I stepped back, pulled the door closed, and latched it with the metal hook and eye latch Edwin had installed. The generator coughed. Not a sputter. A cough. Like something choked it from the inside. The hum dropped for half a second, stuttered, and the engine started to die. I grabbed the door and ripped it open. The fuel shutoff lever was moving, not bumped, not nudged, moving. I watched it tilt from up to halfway down in a smooth, deliberate arc like someone's finger was pushing it. I lunged forward and grabbed the lever, flipped it back up, held it there with my thumb pressed hard against the metal. The generator caught. The engine smoothed out. The hum went back to normal. I kept my thumb on the lever for 10 seconds, 20, 30. It didn't move again. I let go slowly and stepped back. The lever stayed up. I looked at the radio on the top shelf. Red light still glowing. I looked at the lever. I looked at Edwin's laminated note on the bottom shelf with the last line underlined 3 times. This is not a joke. The note suddenly made perfect sense. Edwin hadn't bumped the lever with his elbow, or maybe he had the first time, but that wasn't why he wrote the note in huge letters and underlined it and laminated the paper. He wrote it because the lever moved on its own, because something out there could reach it, and Edwin had figured out the timing, when it could touch things, when it had access. I'd move the radio, change the setup, and in that exact moment, the second I latched the shed door, the river found an opening, found the fuel shutoff, almost killed the generator. If I'd been 5 seconds slower, the engine would have died, and it was 20 minutes before sunrise. Rule 2 said no lights after midnight, unless the generator's running. I didn't know what happened if the lights went out before dawn, but I knew Edwin had worked very hard to make sure it never did. I grabbed the radio off the shelf, carried it back to the cabin, set it on the table, turned the power off manually. The red light went dark and stayed dark. I sat down and stared at it for 20 minutes. At 800, I was supposed to check in with Lee. Tuesday and Saturday mornings. Today was Tuesday. I looked at the radio and didn't turn it on. By noon, I'd made my decision. I wasn't staying. I didn't care about the property or the inheritance or eliminating rent. I didn't care what Edwin had done for 9 years or what Lee said about discipline and stability. I'd been here one night and something had climbed the dock posts and recited my birthday. and tried to kill the generator the second I changed a single detail. That was enough. I packed the duffel in 10 minutes. Clothes, laptop, French press. Same stuff I'd unpacked yesterday. I left the binder on the table, left the radio, left the bowl and the salt and the foil packet of gum Lee gave me. I loaded the duffel into the Pathfinder and wedged it behind the passenger seat, threw the backpack on top. The deed packet was still on the dashboard where I'd left it. I shoved it in the glove box and slammed it shut. The engine started on the first turn. I put it in reverse and backed away from the cabin, turned around in the clearing, pointed the hood south down the dirt track I'd come in on. I drove. The track looked the same as yesterday. 2 ruts with grass up the middle, spruce branches scraping both sides. I kept it at 20 miles per hour and watched for the spots where the logging road widened out. At mile 2, the trees opened up on the left, showing water in the distance. I didn't remember water on the left. Yesterday, it had been on the right. I kept driving. At mile 4, the road curved hard right and the canopy got thicker. I followed the curve. The GPS still showed no signal. I didn't have the printed directions anymore. I'd left them on the cabin table. At mile 6, I should have hit the turnoff back to Route 16. Instead, the road just kept going. Same ruts, same branches, no intersection. I slowed down, checked the odometer. I'd driven 6.3 miles from the cabin. The directions said 4.6 miles to the dead end where the camp road met the logging road. I'd gone almost 2 miles past that. I kept driving. The road curved left, then right, then left again. The curves felt wrong, too smooth, too regular. At mile 8, the trees thinned. At mile 8.2, I saw buildings. At mile 8.4, I pulled into a paved parking lot with 2 gas pumps and a Circle K. I stopped the Pathfinder in the middle of the lot and stared. Same store, same pumps, same peeling red paint on the trim. Through the window, I could see the self-serve coffee station and the register and Cindy standing behind the counter with her curly auburn hair looking straight at me. I checked the odometer again. 8.4 miles. I'd driven south for 8.4 miles on a road that should have taken me back to Route 16, and I was sitting in the same parking lot I'd stopped at 2 days ago on my way in. Cindy didn't move, just stood there watching me through the glass. I sat in the idling Pathfinder and stared back. I drove back to Rockwood around noon, needed gas and coffee and to see something that wasn't trees or water for 10 minutes. The Pathfinder's check engine light glowed steady. I pulled into the Circle K and saw Cindy through the window wiping down the counter. She looked up when the bell chimed, saw me, saw the mud caked up to the door handles on both sides of the Pathfinder. "Road got you," she said. I grabbed coffee from the self-serve, black, poured it into a styrofoam cup that bent a little when I squeezed. "Yeah," I said. "Ruts are worse than last week." Road does that to new caretakers. She rang me up, $2.18. Tries to shake you loose before you settle in. I handed her 3 singles. She made change and put the coins in my palm one at a time. Quarter, dime, 2 pennies. "Edwin ever try to leave?" I asked. Her hand stopped halfway to the register. "Once," she said. I waited. Year 4, I think. Maybe 5. He came through here just before sunset with his truck packed. Duffel in the back, boxes. Said he was done with it. Said he followed every rule and it didn't matter because the place wanted more than rules. Wanted him. She closed the register. He made it about 60 miles south. Pulled into a rest stop near Greenville around 10 p.m. and fell asleep in the cab. Woke up at dawn on his own dock. Still in his truck. Engine off. Keys in the ignition. Salt in his mouth, not a little. Packed in there like someone shoved a handful down his throat while he slept. I put the coins in my pocket. Didn't drink the coffee yet. "He drove 60 miles, I said. "He did. And woke up at the camp. On the dock, in the truck, with salt in his mouth." She looked at me steady. Like the river carried him home. Like it was showing him what happens when you resist. I thought about Edwin's binder. 9 years of entries. Disciplined. Exact. No gaps except the last 3 days. He came back here after? I asked. 2 days later. Bought gas and cigarettes. Didn't say a word about it. I asked if he was okay, and he said he was fine, just tired. But his hands shook when he paid. The coffee was too hot. I drank it anyway. You're telling me he tried to leave and the river brought him back? I'm telling you what happened, Cindy said. You do what you want with it. I looked out the window at the Pathfinder. Mud up to the door handles. Duffel bag in the back seat. Deed packet on the dash. Escape attempts are part of it, I said. Yeah, not a mistake, not bad luck. Part of the trap. She nodded once. I left the change on the counter and walked out. I got back to camp at 3:47. Sun was still high but dropping. I had maybe 2 hours before dusk. I unlocked the door, checked the generator. Fuel at half, running smooth. I didn't touch the radio. Left it in the shed on the top shelf, where the red light probably still glowed. Inside, I filled the salt bowl. Same white ceramic with the hairline crack. Poured Morton salt halfway up. Placed it on the kitchen windowsill facing the river, 4:18 p.m. I sat down at the table and opened my hand. The foil packet sat there. 5 sticks of peppermint gum. Sealed. Lee said it was for testing, not comfort. Said if I smelled peppermint without opening the pack, put on the life jacket and stay inside. I peeled the foil back. The smell hit immediately. Sharp, clean, artificial. Same as last night when the ripple stopped at the dock. I pulled out 1 stick, unwrapped it, put it in my mouth and chewed. Peppermint flooded everything. Taste, smell, the back of my throat. I kept chewing and the flavor stayed strong, didn't fade the way gum usually does after 30 seconds. I sat there with gum in my mouth and realized how easy it would be. If the smell came again tonight, I'd think it was the gum. I'd think I opened the pack earlier and forgot. I'd think it was safe because I caused it. I wouldn't put on the life jacket. I wouldn't stay back from the window. I'd go outside because I'd convinced myself the smell was ordinary. That was the test. Not whether I could recognize peppermint, whether I could recognize when my own judgment was being steered. I spit the gum into the trash and rinsed my mouth 3 times with water from the jug under the sink. The taste stayed for another 20 minutes. I made it to midnight, sat at the table facing the window. Generator hummed outside. Life jacket hung on the nail by the door. Salt bowl on the sill. I didn't open the gum again. At 12:03 a.m., the radio came alive. I heard it through the shed wall, static first. Then a voice. Not Lee's, not my mother's, Edwin's. I hadn't heard Edwin's voice before. Didn't know what he sounded like. But I knew it was him the same way I knew my mother's cadence last night. The voice said, "The third X is the answer." I stayed in my chair, watched the dock through the window. Flat water, no ripples. "You saw the map," Edwin's voice said. "You saw the 3 marks. You're looking at the wrong one." I thought about the hand-drawn map in the binder. 3 red X's, first near the dock, second in the woods to the west, third at the southeast corner where the property line met water. "Check again," the voice said. I pulled the binder across the table and flipped to the map. Studied it under the lamp. The third X sat in the corner, southeast, where the property line met the river. But there was something else. A coffee stain. Old brown ring spreading across the bottom right corner of the page. I'd seen it before and ignored it because it was just a stain. I tilted the page under the light. Another mark, smaller. Red ink partially hidden under the coffee ring. Not at the property line. 2 miles east. Off the property. Near a thin line Edwin had drawn to mark the logging road. A culvert. "You see it now," Edwin's voice said through the shed wall. "That's where you take the salt. Not the bowl, all of it. The whole container. You empty it there, and the river lets you go. I stared at the map, at the hidden X, at the culvert marked 2 miles away. It's the release point, the voice continued. I found it year 6, never had the guts to use it. But you're smarter than me. You'll do it right. The container of Morton's salt sat on the counter. Maybe 3 pounds left. Cylindrical. Blue label. Pour it in the culvert at midnight. The water flows back to the river, carries the offering downstream, breaks the loop. You'll be free by dawn. I looked at the clock. 12:11 a.m. I could drive there in 15 minutes, be back by 1. You don't have much time, Edwin's voice said. Needs to be midnight, exact. That's when the current runs strongest. I thought about Edwin waking up on the dock with salt in his mouth. I thought about the voice last night reciting my full name, my birthday, my divorce date. I thought about how badly I wanted to leave. How the severance was gone and Marcus's couch was 5 hours south, and this place was a trap that didn't end. The voice was giving me exactly what I needed, which meant it was lying. But maybe it wasn't. I grabbed the binder and stood up. I put the Pathfinder in reverse at 12:17 a.m. The binder sat on the passenger seat open to the map page. I'd circled the hidden X with a pen from the kitchen drawer. 2 miles east on the logging road. Right before the fork, where the road split toward Gilead. I knew this was stupid. I drove anyway. The headlights cut through trees. Ruts jolted the suspension every 10 feet. Mud sprayed up the sides. I checked the odometer. 0.8 miles, 1.2, 1.6. The radio came alive on the dash. I'd left it in the shed, on the top shelf, door latched. But it was here now, sitting in the cup holder, red light glowing, static pouring out. I didn't remember bringing it. Lee's voice came through. Strained, wet, urgent. Douglas, I'm in the river. I need help. I'm at the culvert. I can't get out. I slowed the Pathfinder, checked the odometer. 1.9 miles. Douglas, please. I can't hold on much longer. The current's pulling me under. Lee's voice. Exact rhythm. Same clipped tone he used yesterday when he handed me the radio and the gum. I'm at the culvert. I can see the road. I can see headlights. Is that you? 2.1 miles. I saw the culvert ahead. Concrete mouth set into the embankment on the right. Water trickling out. Maybe 8 inches deep. Draining into a ditch that ran parallel to the road for 50 feet before disappearing into the trees. Toward the river. Douglas, I'm right here. Just come to the edge. I can't climb out alone. I stopped the Pathfinder 30 feet back. Lee's voice said my name again. Said he was losing his grip. Said the water was rising. I looked at the culvert. At the ditch. At the trees where the water drained toward the river. The voice last night gave me information to prove it knew me. The voice tonight gave me a solution to prove it could help me. Now it was giving me urgency to make me move fast. Same pattern. 3 steps. Prove. Provide. Pressure. The culvert wasn't a release point. It was a drain. A place where the river reached past its banks. Where it could pull someone close without them stepping into the water. I put the Pathfinder in park and checked the clock on the dash. 11:58 p.m. I popped the trunk and grabbed the bag of rock salt I'd bought at the hardware store in Greenville. 20 pounds, ice melt. Calcium chloride mixed with sodium chloride. I'd bought it for the porch steps in case of snow. 59 p.m. I ripped the bag open and walked to the culvert. Poured a thick line across the mouth. White crystals piled up 6 inches high, spread 3 feet wide, blocking the opening completely. The radio screamed. Lee's voice turned into static, turned into my mother's voice, turned into something underneath that sounded wet and multi-layered like 3 people talking through water at once. I threw the VHF radio into the ditch. It hit the water and sank. The clock in the Pathfinder flipped to midnight. The water in the ditch foamed, white froth boiling up from nothing. The foam spread fast, reached the culvert mouth, hit the salt line. Something rose. Tall. Wrong proportions. Limbs too long and bent at joints that didn't match human anatomy. It came up out of 8 inches of water, like the water was deeper than the ditch, like it went down forever, and this thing was climbing up from the bottom. It reached for the salt line, pulled back. Skin, if it was skin, blistered where it touched the crystals. A voice came out of it. My mother's cadence. Dougie, honey, please. Then it cycled, pitched down, wet choking sound. Words breaking apart into syllables that didn't match any language. The thing folded backward into the water, limbs collapsing in reverse. Sliding down into the ditch that was still only 8 inches deep, but somehow held the entire shape as it sank. The foam stopped. The water went still. I stood there with the empty salt bag in my hand and my breath fogging in the headlights. The culvert dripped. That was it. I got back in the Pathfinder and turned around. I made it back to camp at 12:41 a.m. The generator was still running. The life jacket still hung by the door. The salt bowl still sat on the windowsill. I waited until 6:32 a.m. when the sky turned gray-blue. Took the bowl outside. Walked 5 steps from the porch. Dumped the salt onto the ground. Rule 6. Set bowl at dusk. Dump at dawn. I went back inside and made coffee. Burnt grounds from a new jar I found in the cabinet. Tasted terrible. Drank it anyway. Lee showed up at 8:15 a.m. Same boat, same uniform, same steady walk up from the dock. I met him on the porch. "You okay?" he asked. "Yeah." "Generator running all night?" "Yeah." "Any trouble?" I looked at him, at his face, his hands, the way he stood. "You send anything on the radio last night?" I asked. "No. Tuesday and Saturday check-ins. That's it." "You didn't call for help?" "Didn't say you were in the river?" He stared at me. "No." "You're sure?" "I'm sure." He stepped closer. "What happened?" I told him. The voice at midnight, the map, the culvert, the thing in the ditch. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he said, "You didn't go in the water?" "No." "You use salt?" "Yeah." "Where's the radio?" "Bottom of the ditch." He nodded once. "Good." "That's it?" I said. "Just good?" "You're alive. You followed the pattern. You didn't break routine." He looked past me at the cabin, at the generator shed, at the dock. "That's better than most." He walked back to his boat and left. I called Randy Murphy at 9:43 a.m. He answered on the second ring. "Mr. Edwards." "I'm signing it over," I said. "Signing what over?" "The camp, the property, the deed. I want to transfer it to the state." Silence on the line for 3 seconds. "There are procedures," Randy said. "Forms. A clerk in Bangor handles transfers. Her name is Harper Sawyer." "Set it up." "You're certain?" "Yeah." "The property is paid in full. No liens, no taxes owed. You'd be surrendering an asset worth... I don't care what it's worth. Set it up." Another pause. "I'll contact Miss Sawyer," Randy said. "She'll prepare the paperwork. You'll need to sign in person. Bangor Courthouse. 2nd floor." "When?" "I'll call you back within 2 hours." He hung up. Harper Sawyer had the papers ready by 2 p.m. I drove to Bangor. Took 4 hours. Parked in the courthouse lot and went to the 2nd floor. She was younger than I expected. Maybe late 40s. Black hair and a neat cut. Office cardigan. Lanyard badge. "Mr. Edwards," she said. "Please sit." I sat. She slid 3 documents across the desk. Deed transfer, quitclaim, state acceptance form. "Sign at the bottom of each page," she said. "Initial the highlighted sections." I read nothing, just signed. She notarized each page with a stamp and her signature, collected the papers, put them in a folder. "The transfer is complete," she said. "The state of Maine now holds the deed to 41 Overlook Lane, Gilead. You retain no ownership, no claim, and no liability." "What happens to it?" I asked. "It becomes part of the state forest system. A warden will be assigned as caretaker." I thought about Lee, about Edwin, about 9 years of entries in a green binder. "They know what they're getting into?" I asked. Harper looked at me with no expression. "The assignment includes a full briefing." I stood up. "One more thing," she said. I stopped. The prior caretaker left a note. It was filed with the estate documents. "Mr. Murphy thought you should have it." She handed me a folded piece of paper. I opened it. Edwin's handwriting, blue ink, block letters. "If you're reading this, you made it farther than I did. Don't stay. Don't think you can win. The river doesn't lose. It just waits." I folded the note and put it in my pocket. I drove away at 4:51 p.m. Sun was still up. Maybe 2 hours of daylight left. I took Route 16 south, didn't stop in Rockwood, didn't stop in Greenville. Kept driving until I hit the interstate and the trees thinned out and the roads had lines painted on them. Edwin's life jacket sat in my trunk. I didn't know why I'd grabbed it. Just did. I kept it there. I drove south and I stayed gone.